Hi, my name's Stephen McQuaid, and this is my electronic portfolio for the Masters in Educational Technology program at UBC. This video is basically a bit of an introduction to my site, and it also serves as a bit of a walkthrough in addition to that explanation. So I'll just give you a little bit of an idea as to why it is the way I made it, as well as some extra info perhaps. So it will look a little different by the time I'm done. Say for a few finishing touches, it'll be pretty much like this, but there'll be a couple of extra references and this video thrown in by the time you see it. The first thing is basically why the Volvox. Well, if I go back to my beginning page here, as you see it as you go on, the first thing is the metaphor. When I started thinking about the metaphor, I wanted to go with ecological metaphor because my background's in science and biology, and when I encountered an article by Zhao and Frank early on in the program, it really resonated with me, and it was something that came up a few times in the program, not just that article but the whole idea. So my first one was thinking of a tree, but I thought, no, that's a cliche. Maybe I'll think of something like a baobab, which has got branches that look like, the roots are really the roots up in the air, and it looks kind of upside down. And I thought, oh, that'll be cool, but no. And then I thought about rhizomatic learning, as put out by Deleuze and Guattari, and how there's branching still, but really the connections are much more diverse and less linear. But then I thought, no, that's kind of been done before too, in a sense. So then I thought, what about maybe the Volvox? Now, the Volvox was interesting to me because I had encountered it in my first degree, probably around 1996, and I thought it was something that was a very interesting organism. And in this case, I felt it would really serve me well in terms of being a good muse for this comparison. Essentially, it's a microscopic organism that is made of many individual cells combined to form really kind of a new entity. It's kind of the bridge between unicellular and multicellular organisms. So after you go through a bit more of a reading of my metaphor, you can go on to the first section. Now, the first section I called embedding because I felt that the 4 core courses that were given in the program were really a process of embedding certain basic foundations or principles in me that would help me better complete the courses later on. So all these individual cells like you see in the background here are in the matrix of this sphere of that particular Volvox. Sort of are these courses, so to speak, and I needed these to get through. My very first one was 512, learning theories and the application of them to instruction. My main piece of evidence or artifact on that one was my very first CMAP. So we went through these main ones: social, cognitive, behavioral, online, and constructivist. And the ones that really resonated with me the most were constructivism and, to a little bit of a lesser degree, social and cognitive, especially the works of Vygotsky was one in particular, and now later on Ausubel is one that's come up a bit more for me too, and you'll see a bit more about that later on in the presentation here. So after that, moved on to research methodologies in education, and this is when I first met the article by Zhao and Frank that had me thinking in terms of ecological metaphors. There's nothing flashy to show you for this one, but basically it had me view my own workplace as an ecosystem that was invaded by a foreign species, so to speak, or an invasive species, which would be technology. And I wanted to look at my co-workers and see if there were ways that I could help them better or more easily adopt technology. So you can see the literature review for that, as well as my proposal of how I could start that process. Further on down, this article became useful again when, in the Foundations of Educational Technology, I was put in a group that dealt with the ecology of educational technology. We created a Google site As you can see here, there was myself, Dennis, Gordana, Jasmeet, and Danielle, and we created what I think is a very nice site that encompasses a lot of ideas of educational technology and the ecology of it, not just the metaphor, but also just its effect on the environment. There are many things to go through: activities, impact, factors that affect it, links that were useful later on outside of the course. Feel free to explore this later on as you go through. Now, after this, and there's a couple more you could have a peek at later, a couple more add-on artifacts. After this, my final piece of embedding, I believe, is from 510, the Design of Tech-Supported Learning Environments. I did one assignment early on, which was Google products in the classroom, and then after that, I was put in a group that worked on a blended learning project, and it was using Moodle as a platform, and the gist of the project basically was making an argument, and we'd have students work on things inside and outside of the classroom to complete the tasks and the outcomes as we had them laid out. It was quite a task to take on, and if you wish to go through it at any length, please feel free. It's open and available to all, I believe, as long as you're under guest access at least. So that takes us to the next part of the Volvox, which is coordination. So one of the other things that I think is neat about the Volvox is that all these individual cells that are connected in its matrix or outside of its sphere have little whip-like tails, or flagella, at least at some point in their existence, and they can use them to provide movement for the whole being. And the idea that these little tiny, seemingly insignificant things can get their act together and coordinate movement in a group effort, I thought was really analogous to us students working in courses for common goals. So the first one was one of my favorite courses, which is 565A, the Selection, Design, and Application of Learning Technologies. In terms of selection, it was very helpful and useful. There's things that I still look to today, particularly Bates and Poole's sections model. And the item that I created as my main project was a Moodle, and the Moodle was essentially for teaching my grade 7 language arts class. I have a video tour here as well that talks about my Moodle and will walk you through the whole thing. The other course that I picked as coordination, or movement so to speak, was Constructivist Strategies for E-Learning. It connected really well with my first course, and my main artifact for that was another CMAP. But in this case, you could see on the left-hand side, it's my prior knowledge connected with my new knowledge, and you can see lots of interconnections between the two. So it was nice to take this course. I got to revisit my original map and edit that and crunch it up in some ways, and then combine it with new theories and new people and new ideas. After this section, we go on to production or reproduction. Essentially, I'm just comparing the production of artifacts and projects to the reproduction of a Volvox. So we're both producing something in a sense. The couple of courses that I picked out for this was Ventures in Learning Technology. This was really outside my comfort zone in that it was very business-based. I had never done anything quite like that before. It really stretched me, but at the same time, it was basically at the top of my zone of proximal development, if you were, and I think I came out with some neat pieces of work. One of the first pieces was my rephrase pitch. So rephrase was what I called the world's first automatic text leveler, which would allow students or anybody else to use this app to take any piece of visible text and adjust it to their own reading level. So you can look at the written pitch for that you just saw, or you could watch my elevator pitch, which is here. And then after that was Technology in the Arts and Humanities Classroom. I chose this because I'm currently teaching and have been for a while language arts plus social studies to a couple of different junior high grades. So from this link you can go to a blog that I made for my students. That's another blended learning example, and with it I have lots of questions for the kids that builds on the things that we have done in class, in addition to more Web 2.0 experiences, everything from eduglogs to videos for them, along with questions and prompts, and final activities, as you can see here. Now, if I go back to perhaps one of these pages, you can see all of my students' comments are there, so you can see many of their interactions and work with the unit for good or for worse, but mostly for good. So it's an interesting artifact in that I got to use it with my students, and it's there for everybody to see, warts and all. So now, finally, the last one is revolution or evolution. I picked this as a term because I thought the Volvox as it stands has basically been around for about 200 million years without very much change, and I wanted to look at it as at least dynamic, evolving, if it doesn't change all that much. But the fact of evolution comes in too, because a lot of people think of it as being the link between unicellular and multicellular. So the two courses that come up for me in terms of moving and evolving are, well, lastly there's this one, the graduating project, but also the other course that I'm currently taking on text technologies. This one was kind of funny in a sense in that there was not one project that stood out for me as a huge touchstone, but this one, it was almost like a method course, the same way a person could be a method actor. The process is very much linked to my outcome. By that I mean the learnings of the course are very much woven text style or textile style into my learning, if you catch my meaning. The fabrics of all these text and literacy themes kind of snuck into everything else I did. There are a couple of things I did post for you to see though. One is a commentary, and another is the second commentary that I did that dealt with some different aspects of literacy. Then finally, the graduating project is this. The things that I added for you here are my personal learning theories that I revisited and then edited to see how I thought I may have changed or grown since my very first course to now. It's been about 3 years, and I was curious to see how my ideas may or may not have changed. So if you'd like to see those, feel free to look at them there or there. To finish with this, you can click on About This Site just to find my proposal for this portfolio, or the rubric itself that you could grade it by. As well, if you want to learn a little bit more about me, you can visit the About Me link on it. In a nutshell, kind of a long nutshell, that's my e-portfolio, and I hope that you enjoy having a look through it, and then you learn something about me and my growth through the program and through the making of this EP itself. Thanks.